Hey everybody, Brian Good in for Kevin this week. Even though it is snow talk, we're going to talk more about storms than anything, so we'll get to that in a second. Quick update on our stats. Finally got a trace of snow. I was a month late, but we got it. We're behind schedule, as you see there, 1.7 inches on the board. Not an important thing here. It shouldn't shock you. There's no items of interest showing up over the next 14 days I'm going to add to the board at this point. We need to focus on the short term by all means. And we do have quite a bit of rain developing to our south. It's headed of a cold front. You guys to the south, E-Town down to Campbellsville, have really had some showers and some thunder and lightning along with that. Very light rain in Louisville, drizzle more than anything, but it is starting to increase. And more importantly, along the actual cold front that's going to come through here later on tonight, we're already getting development as expected right along the front. That'll be in here later, and we could see not so much this rain bothering us as it will enhance this area over Paducah. I think that area will fill in tonight, and that area could very well provide us some lightning and thunder for Louisville. This part now near St. Louis will likely be the very back edge and should be nothing more than just light rain fading out after that. We get rid of this system tomorrow morning. Once we do, we have another strong piece of energy that's going to dive in and track just like that over the nation's heartland into the Great Lakes. As it's rounding the corner here into Missouri, that is where we've really got to watch it for pumping in a lot of warm air moisture and adding in some interesting wind fields along with that. Having said that, let me take you into our short-term model first, and then we'll get into the data. About 2 o'clock in the morning, there's that initial surge I think will fill in and move in from Illinois later on. This will be between 1 and 3 in the morning, and here's the back edge. It's in St. Louis now. Again, that kind of fades out in the morning. Expecting temperatures to climb into around the 60-degree mark. Our record tomorrow is 64. I think that'll be safe, unless we hit 64 or higher after midnight, because we're going to see a warm surge developing. I think it's going to take place probably after midnight, though, the way it's looking. This is the warm front, some showers, lightning, and thunder with that. Once that surges quickly toward the I-70 corridor throughout the day on Wednesday, the question is, how much sun do we pick up Wednesday? And we're seeing hints. We could see a few breaks. Therefore, temperatures could really skyrocket. Now, the model's already given us 69 for high. The record is 67. So already, with a cloudy sky, the model is indicating the record will be broken on Wednesday. I think we're going to go higher than that, probably into the lower 70s, mid-70s if we get enough sun. This could lead to either 1 or 2 rounds of thunderstorms, and the RPM hinting at 2 rounds. I could see why that potential would be there. Here's the first round, and then the second one, though, would be more of a threat, but the timing on that one would be more toward evening, so at least we have that on our side being more evening-oriented versus late afternoon. May help us out on that end because the better wind fields would happen at this point of the night, not in the afternoon first round, if that makes sense. So the first round may be on the radar, but it won't have all the ingredients to produce severe weather. But the second round would have much more of a chance, but it would lose a little more of the heating of the day. And if it's too rainy, by the way, with that first round, the second round may not even happen at all. So a lot of questions still how Wednesday is going to play out. Here are the soundings. First off, for tonight, I want to mention this from the NAM. It is picking up on what we call skinny cape right here. So the yellow in between the red. A little bit of cape, so that's why there could be some lightning and thunder. It says here 5 a.m. Could be closer to 4 a.m. for us. Then we get into tomorrow night. It's hard to read this, I know, but here are the wind arrows. This is the ground level. This is where the airplanes fly, way up high above. That's about a south-southeast wind at the ground level and west-southwest aloft. So not only is there some speed shear, you see it gets into pink, speeds at different levels of the atmosphere, but also there is some turning going on, and we're seeing that on the helicity as well. In fact, it's hard to read this. The helicity shown up as 834 on the NAM. Not a lot of cape, only 213 on cape, but 213 in December, late December, can still produce some active weather when it comes to thunderstorms, so it is worth watching. LIs just barely get into the category of producing lightning and thunder, but we got more red than anything showing up here on the indices, so it is worth watching for Wednesday night. Now, the GFS, not as scary, if you will. NAM has tendency to overdo parameters, too. It should be mentioned that has happened many times with the NAM. It can overdo the idea of things. So here's the GFS idea. Not as much directional shear, and there is some speed shear there, although it's hard to see it because it's cut off. The helicity is 0 on this, and the cape is about the same, about 230. So still very stark differences between the two at the moment. So we got to look at other data. And I decided to look at the SRAF, because the SRAF model has a tendency to do a good job and shows the ranges of potential that you're looking at. First is going to be the dew point. Once you get dew points in the 50 to 60 degree range here, That's when you're talking about enough moisture to produce some not only heavy downpours, but maybe some severe weather. The black line is the average of all the other crazy lines. And notice the average is getting us at 60 at the time the line will be moving in Wednesday night. And there's pretty tight gradient here on that. The model is really good agreement on dew points getting very close to 60. So we've got the fuel on the wet side of things when it comes to moisture. Now when you look at the ability for shear, 40 knots is usually the magic number for potential for wind damage. You see here that as we head into the nighttime hours Wednesday, it seems to peak out at about 42 knots. Well enough in the zone here for severe weather. Notice that some of the other models try to take it higher. That would be based on timing, and if we got more sun than expected, that's why the model's going to go a little nuts there on the higher end. I think that's a little too high. But the black line, again, just paying attention just to that only, you can see the average is about 42 knots. And when you look at capes, again, depending on timing and sunlight, that's why you get a high variance at this point, anywhere from over 1,000, which seems too high. The black line suggests about 400 to 500, which seems a little more reasonable, and again is enough to produce severe weather. When you look at SIPS, and SIPS is, well, the cool thing about this is it takes all the data that is forecast by a particular model, and it looks at all past events that it has records of and says, okay, based on this scenario Wednesday night, what has happened before in a very similar fashion. It tries to match it up. Now, no two situations are exactly alike, but it tries to match what is the closest event to this setup and what actually happened. And going back all the years, this is all the wind damage that took place since the 1900s there. And you can see that the wind damage was focused in the Ohio Valley and to the south. We see the black dots, those are high wind reports. Tornadoes, mainly concentrated across the south, which would make more sense, higher dew points in that area. There were a few tornadoes in the past with this kind of a setup. Again, this is the NAM. And when I look at the NAM years, it actually will list the order of significance. It listed November 24th of 2001 as the top analog, but look at the other analog that showed up just 2 years ago. Do you remember that? We had tornado warnings in effect, a lot of high winds. That was 2 years today, by the way, of 2013, number 9 on the list. But when I looked at the GFS, it was number 1 on its list. So then I wanted to look at the winds in the past based on the GFS interpretation, and it focused a little more over Kentucky and Tennessee for some of the high winds, and the tornadoes, not as many, but the main focus was across the south, and I think that is much more realistic based on the wind fields. That the tornado threat will looks to be across Tennessee, Missouri, and Alabama. Mississippi and Alabama. Much higher threat for tornadoes given this, but isolated, I wouldn't rule it out in our area based on what we're looking at. So at this point, Storm Prediction Center, they only update day 3, by the way. This is Wednesday once a day. They did that last night, so they only brought the slight risk to about Nashville. They'll update it again tonight. I got a feeling they should, anyway, push it more to the north, but it depends on the forecaster if they agree with all the data I just showed you. We'll see. As far as Christmas Day is going, we'll get rid of this crazy stuff on Thursday morning, by the way. Thursday, Christmas Eve looks okay. Christmas Day will start off sunny. I think clouds will move in for the afternoon, but then yet another warm front will move in Christmas night. So it's going to be wet Christmas afternoon, late afternoon, probably more after sunset, but another round of heavier rain moving in as we into Christmas night into Saturday and for the weekend. Yeah, that means more warm weather. As far as when does the cold weather come back? Well, the indices today, the Euro, for a while there, some of the runs are trying to take it negative, but the latest one is still trying to keep it positive. The PNA trying to get in positive territory. NAO is trying to get negative. The AO is trying to get at least neutral or negative. So they're trying to get into a colder pattern, but it's not going to be sudden. I think it's going to be a process, a step down deal. And the latest Japanese model updated for December for the winter outlook, and it is showing colder than normal weather over a good chunk of the east, especially the south, and it is dry for us and wet across the southeast. Just for the record, it was showing the nearly exact same thing last year at this time, except it wasn't as cold last year at this time for the winter. So we'll talk more about that on Saturday when I do an update to the winter outlook. So just FYI on that. And by the way, just as a reminder, here was our forecast on Halloween for the beginning of winter. We are forecasting more warm than cold here across the southeast. All the mountain snow to the west, but this is what we are forecasting for the flip that'll take place likely in January into February, and the flip will put us more in the battle zone for warm and cold shots to give us a chance for some rain, snow, and ice events. I think the heavier snow will likely fall just north of us, but it's going to be a close call. But the question is, when are we going to see that flip happen? Well, it may not be a flip. It may be more of a slight cartwheel. That's the way it's looking now for January into February. But again, we'll talk more about that on Saturday. Let's get through the storm potential first, because there's a lot to track on this holiday week. That's it for now. Talk to you guys later.